Hey y'all, thanks so much for joining me for another DIY video today. My name is Carrie and I want to welcome you to my channel today. Whether it's your first time to my channel or you're a returning subscriber, I want to say welcome, my friend. I've got something amazing in store for you today, and it is all about fall. Keisha over at Sweet Urban Rose and myself decided to team up for this video today, and we wanted to challenge each other to go on the Kirklands website and find some fall decor and dupe it for less. I totally admit it was a little bit difficult for me to even wrap my brain around fall decor right now because the weather here at the beach has just been way too gorgeous. I'm not even kidding. After a whole week of rain, we've had beautiful weather the last couple of days. So it was a little bit difficult for me to even think about leaves changing and falling, but I did it anyway just for y'all. So I hopped on over to the Kirklands website and totally fell in love with this adorable distressed pumpkin wagon. Y'all, it is the cutest thing I have ever seen. It's kind of big and it's a great size and it's amazing and it would look awesome at my house, but there's no way I could spend $60 on it. Like, that's a lot of money. So I'm totally going to try to dupe this for a fraction of the price. I'm estimating I'm going to have less than $10 in it. I'm estimating more along the $7 or $8 range. We'll just see what it comes to at the end of the video. So if you want to find out how I dupe this wagon, keep watching this video. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a big thumbs up because that would mean the world to me. And if you are not already subscribed to my channel, consider hitting that subscribe button down below. And if you don't want to miss anything that I've got coming your way, make sure you've got all those notification bells checked. Also, if you are totally in love with this video, be sure to share it with your friends because that totally helps my channel grow. I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for everybody that has shared my videos and everything this last year because it has totally helped my channel grow beyond my wildest dreams. We are this close to hitting 75,000 subscribers in a year, and y'all, that is just mind-blowing to me. So I just want to thank y'all super quick and say, yeah, I really appreciate y'all. So share this with your friends. That's enough talking, y'all. Let's start making this wagon. Okay, the first thing that we're going to do is zip tie two of our little paper towel holders together. Let me show you how easy that is. You don't really have to worry about how far to space them just yet because we're going to work on that after they're zip tied. I'm going to go ahead and put 4 of my zip ties on here just so that I know it doesn't go anywhere. Make sure that they're pulled as tight as you can get them. And then we'll just clip off the excess. You do want to make sure that they're all turned the same way onto the bottom. Just like that. Now, one thing I do want to mention is you don't want your piece, you don't want them to be like this. You don't want this to stick out on either end. You want to have some gap between there, and you'll see why when we start putting it together. So you want to make sure that you've got about a finger length that you can put in between here. Now I am going to put just a little bit of hot glue on my edges here, just so that I know that this is not going to go anywhere. And actually what I'm going to be using today is not a hot glue gun, it's a Cool Shot glue gun. These are awesome from Surebonder, and the bond is super cool. You do have to use the Cool Shot glue sticks in this gun. You can't use regular dual temp sticks. You do have to use the Cool sticks. But watch this. I can glue this and immediately touch it. It's not hot at all, and it just holds super, super well. Okay, now I'll put a little bit on this side too. And I'll repeat this process for the other two. Now, before you glue the other one down, you do want to make sure that both of your pieces are the same exact width. So just kind of use your first one as a guide. Okay. Our wheels and our axles are done. So now I'm going to move on to the handle. Now you have a lot of options for your handle. I'm choosing to use just a ratty old strainer that I had in my cabinet that I was actually going to throw away, but I ended up sticking it in my crafting stash because I knew I could probably do something with it. Now another option for the handle would be to use one of the little children's bracelets. That would work really well. You could also use a shower curtain ring. There's lots of different options. You could even just take a piece of wire and use that as well. But this is what I had on hand, so this is what I'm going to use. And Dollar Tree also sells these mesh strainers if you want to pick up one of those from there. That's probably honestly where this one came from. And this little piece on the end doesn't bother me. I think it's kind of a cute little detail, and it would even give me a place to put a bow. So I'm going to leave this on. So I want to start off by just cutting off the mesh. And honestly, I probably should throw this away, but knowing me, I'm going to come up with something else because it's kind of got that cool rusty look. So I'm going to hang on to this anyway. Okay, so this is what we've got. I'm going to see if I can pop this little white piece out of here. That popped out pretty easily. This doesn't quite fit my handle. It's a little bit too wide. So I am going to take some wire cutters and just sort of bend this in. That should help. And then I'll just hot glue this down. Again, I'm going to use my Cool Shot glue gun. Not even kidding, this is one of my new favorite toys. Not having those burnt fingertips is amazing. One thing I do want to mention really quick is I did have just a little bit of that mesh strainer that didn't get cut all the way. So I'm just taking some really rough sandpaper and I'm just smoothing that down just so nobody gets cut on it. So it looks fine from this way, but underneath it, it does have a few little rough spots. So I'm going to be safe than sorry. The black paint that I'm going to be using today is the Rust-Oleum 2X Ultra Cover Paint and Primer in one. This is in a matte black finish, and I'm going to just run outside, give these three a nice coat of paint, and I'll be back and we can work on our pumpkins. Okay, y'all, so those pieces are outside drying, and I went ahead and grabbed a piece of my foam core from the Dollar Tree, and I just roughly sketched out a pumpkin shape. You can make yours any size or shape that you fancy, but I did try to mimic the one from Kirklands as much as I could. Now, the piece that I sketched out is roughly 16.5 by 16 wide. I am going to need 2 of these, so I'm going to cut this out with my X-Acto knife. Then I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to cut another piece out of my other piece of foam core. Okay, now do not throw the rest of this foam core away because we're actually going to use that. Okay, there's our pumpkin shape. Looks pretty good, doesn't it? So now I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to do the same thing for the other piece of poster board. If I had been using my noodle, I would have totally thought to move over my piece or turn it long ways, and I could have gotten both of my pumpkins out of this one piece, but I did not. So now I'm going to have to use my other piece. Okay, here's our 2 pumpkins cut out. The next thing that we want to do is to draw out the dimensions for our side pieces as well as the bottom piece. But I'm going to start with my bottom first. So I'm just going to measure, whoops, I'm going to measure how wide this is very carefully. Mine is roughly 12.5 wide. Yours may be the same, it may be different, it's totally up to you as to the size and shape of your pumpkin, but mine is 12.5. So my foam core is roughly 1/4 inch, so I'm going to allow for the thickness of this. So I'm going to subtract that thickness away from the 12.5, and it's going to give me 12. So I'm going to make sure my foam core is 12 inches wide. I also measured the dimensions in between my paper towel holders, and that was roughly 11.5. So I went ahead and subtracted that 1/2 inch from that piece, and that's going to give me 11. So my finished piece is 11 by 12. Yours may be the same, it may be different. Just make sure you measure twice and cut once. Okay, because these sides are roughly the same, I don't want to get them mixed up, so I want to make sure that I know this is my 12-inch side and this one is my 11-inch side, because that would be super easy to get mixed up. Okay, so this is going to be our bottom. Now I want to make my side pieces. Now my side pieces are also going to be 11, but I need to decide how high up I want that to be. I'm thinking I want my piece, kind of want it to fall roughly around 7.5. I kind of like this shape. I think that's a good halfway point. So I'm going to cut 2 more pieces of foam core that are 11 by 7.5. Okay, we're going to put it together just like this. But not yet. Okay, so I happen to have 1 extra piece of scrap foam core from another project. So now I do have 3 pumpkins. But I've got a problem because I need 4. So what I'm going to actually do is to take the first one that I did, that I sketched out, And I've already got the segments drawn on here. I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and just go ahead and cut these out. Then I'm going to flip them over. And I'm just going to cut those extra pieces out of this foam board from the big pumpkin. I really hate wasting. So if I can save all of my poster board, I'm definitely going to do that. And I should have enough scrap poster board to do this. I don't know if y'all are like me and totally save all those little bits and scraps, but they totally come in handy. Now, I will tell you, when you're cutting this foam board, it is super duper helpful to have a new blade in your X-Acto knife. It makes this job a lot easier. Okay, now I'll do the same thing with the rest of these. Get these all cut out, and then we'll come back and I'll show you the next step. Now that I've got all of my pieces cut out, I want to show you how desperate I was not to have to go back to town. I actually did have to piece 2 pieces of my foam cord together to have enough, and I'm totally okay with that. I'll put this to the back and I'll never even see it. So I'm going to make sure that all of my pieces fit together on my bottom board. See, here's my full piece, and here's all my segments. Now we're going to start the layering process, but before we can do that, we need to cut each one of these little foam pieces. Now, when you look at your foam board, you've got 2 layers of poster board. You've also got 1 layer of foam in the middle. You want to take a very sharp X-Acto knife, and you just want to sort of just kind of gouge. You've got to be super careful. You don't want to cut through your bottom piece of your foam board. You only want to cut through your top piece and also the foam itself. So just kind of go up and down. This is what's going to give it that carved out look. You just be super careful not to cut through that bottom piece. And don't really worry too much about all this jaggedness, because we're going to sand this down. Okay, now we'll come back and do the other side. This does get a little bit messy, but it's totally worth it. Crafting is messy. Okay, and there's our first carved out segment. Now we will repeat this process for all 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, all 5 of our segment pieces. Okay, I've got all my pieces cut now. Let's see if I can remember which one went where. So I'm going to start gluing down the middle one first. I'm going to be using my Sure Bonder Cool Shot glue gun because sometimes if you use a super hot temp glue, then your foam core can bend on you or sort of warp, and we definitely don't want that to happen. So I am using this Cool Shot glue gun. You just do have to work fairly quickly. Because it's not as hot. Now, instead of going ahead and gluing on these two sides, I'm going to go ahead and do the outside pieces first so that I know that those edges meet up like I want them to. I have one little piece here that is not quite as carved out as I want it to be, so I'm just going to attempt to carve it out just a little bit more. I want those lines to be really defined. Okay, that's much better. Okay, what do you think? Looks super cool, doesn't it? All right, so now we've got both of our pumpkins done. Now we're ready to put them together, and I'm gonna have to adjust the camera angle slightly, so bear with me. Okay, so I've got my two end pieces here. And I'm going to take the short side. And I'm going to start at the bottom here and just sort of get my angle right before I glue this down. So I'm going to have it at the very bottom. And it's going to be angled slightly up. I'm just going to mark me a line just so that I know where it's supposed to be. And look, I want to show you what I did. This was my first one that I did, and you'll see why. This is why I said do your end first before you glue in your middle, because this one did not match up, but I don't think it's going to matter. It'll be all right. So that is why I said do the end first. Okay, so now I know where to run my bead of glue. And again, I'm using my Sure Bonder Cool Shot. Okay, and if my measurements are correct, this bottom should fit right there. And it does. It's a perfect fit. So cute. And I'll just reinforce all of the seams just so that they're nice and sturdy. Now we'll just glue the other side on. So now I want to take my 320 grit sandpaper and just smooth down all of these edges. If you want to, you can totally do this before you glue everything down. If I had been thinking, that's probably what I would have done. But like I said, I'm making this up as I go along. Okay, now check out how smooth everything is now. It makes such a big difference when you sand. So y'all don't be afraid to use that sandpaper. Now, if you have some parts that are a little bit super jagged and that 320 grit sandpaper is not enough, then you can use a rougher grit sandpaper. You just want to finish it with your 320 grit because that's going to give you a fine finish. Okay, so now that I've got it all dusted off and ready to go, it's time to paint. Now, I'll be honest, I've never tried to spray paint foam before, and I don't want to try now because I'm afraid that it will melt this. So I'm going to stick with my trusty old favorite, the Waverly Chalk Paint in the color Plaster. The trick to painting this foam is going to be to use several light coats. You don't want to glob your paint on because when it soaks down into your foam board, it could bubble up and separate. So you don't want that to happen. You want super thin coats, and that's what's going to be best. So I'm going to run and give this some paint, and we'll be back. Okay, so it actually only took one coat of paint to cover my foam board, and I think it looks really good. So now I want to move on to the distressing. Now, I did let this dry completely overnight, and I'm going to distress it with some brown. Now, I normally love the antique wax from Waverly, but this is just a little bit too dark. I don't want it quite that much of a contrast. So I'm going to go with a lighter brown, and this is the color Coffee Bean in this folk art brand that I think I got from Walmart. And I'm just going to use a dry brush technique. If you're not familiar with dry brushing, you basically are just going to load your paintbrush with a little bit of paint, and then we're going to take it almost all the way off. And now our brush is going to be dry. And then I've got a flat brush here, and I'm just going to use it to highlight those areas that we carved. It's totally up to you how much paint you want on there or how little paint you want on there. You might decide you want some dark spots on the edges since that's what's normally would have more wear. You could even take your flat brush and sort of go in between your edges like that. Just put as much or as little as you feel like. I don't want a whole lot, but I do want to make sure that you can see the pretty sculpted edges here. So I'm going to make sure that I do highlight those pretty well. Okay, so I'm just going to go over both sides of this, and I'll also hit maybe the edges here. I may come back and do some dry brush on the sides just to highlight a little bit. And after we get through with this antiquing, then we will be ready to assemble our pumpkin. Okay, I've gone ahead and just set my pumpkin on top of my wheels, and I'm just not loving how the wheels look. They don't look enough like the inspiration from Kirklands, so I'm going to attempt to pull off a trompe-l'oeil effect. So let's go see if we can do that. So let's see if I can pull off this trompe-l'oeil effect. I've actually gone ahead and tried one beforehand just to see if it was going to work, and I really like the way that it turned out. So I'm going to go ahead and flip it over and do the other side. Now I've got some little skewer pieces here, and I've cut these into 3-inch sections. I think I was actually able to get 4 pieces out of one skewer, and we're going to need a total of 12. So our paper towel holder has 2 little cross sections here. And for this, I'm not using my Cool Temp glue gun because I've not tested out how well it does on the metal and wood, but I know that my normal temp glue gun works really well, so that's what I'm going to use for this. You want to make sure that when you glue this skewer on, that you line it up as close as you can to this little metal piece that's on the back, because we're going to attempt to cover that up. Now we'll just eyeball. Oops, that one's a little short. I'm just going to eyeball here until I get what looks like 2/3 of a pie. That looks pretty good to me. Once we get all of this painted, it's going to blend in and you're not even going to notice that we are fooling the eye, or at least that's my hope anyway. Before I paint it, I will take my warm blow dryer just to get rid of all of these hot glue strings. Now, one thing you need to be super careful with, and I did not do this beforehand, but I did notice it, is you want to make sure that your paper towel holders are flat, because I did get a couple that were a little wonky and I thought I bent them all, but I see this one is not bent all the way. So you may have to do some adjusting on those paper towel holders, and I would totally suggest doing that before you started painting. I mean, they're Dollar Tree paper towel holders, so you know, we can't really expect much. And I am going to place just a little drop of hot glue right in the center here. To seal everything down. Okay, I'm going to go hit this with the blow dryer to get rid of these strings, and then we'll come back and I'll show you my thoughts on how we're going to make this side right here disappear. So bear with me. Okay, I went ahead and did both of my wheels here, and now we're ready to paint. So I'm just going to take some matte Craft Mart acrylic paint, and I'm going to paint my skewers. Okay, so now that I've got both of these painted, now I want to go back with my base color of my pumpkin, and this is where the trompe-l'oeil effect is going to come into play, because we're going to fool the eye into thinking that this crossbar right here is actually part of the pumpkin. So I'm going to go back in with this plaster color from Waverly. And I'm just going to paint this bar the same color as the pumpkin. And my hope is when I put the pumpkin on the wheels that this is going to look like it's part of the pumpkin. Make sure I get all on the inside. And I'll just stop just on the outside of the spoke part here. There's no need to go all the way in, although you could if you wanted to. Okay, I know it's a little wonky right now, but I'm hoping once I put it all together it's gonna all make sense. Let's hope so anyway. Okay, so I'm gonna let these dry for just a few minutes, but in the meantime, I need to attach our pull handle here to the bottom of one of our little wheel pieces. I don't really want it to set directly on top here because I don't want my pumpkin to set up higher. I want the pumpkin to set directly on here. So my thought is going to be to attach it to the bottom of the frame. So I'm just going to take some of the cotton string. You can use wire or string or whatever you've got. Because I don't think that hot glue by itself is going to hold this. I'm just going to wrap my string to help it. Make sure it's in the center. And you want to make sure that you're gluing it on one of your edges that are not your white part, because this is going to be on the inside. You want to make sure you glue it on one of your edges where your black side is facing out, because this is the inside. Don't want to glue it on the other side because that's going to be wrong. And I'm just going to wrap my string over and under and back and forth just to secure it down. As an added safety measure, I'm just going to glue my strings down as well. Okay. I'm going to give all of this time to cool off and dry and all of that jazz, and then we are ready to assemble. Okay, so I've gone ahead and attached one of my spokes to the bottom here, and you can see I just piled on lots of hot glue. No, I know it's not pretty, but when all of this is dry, I'll go back with my Waverly Chalk Paint and Plaster and just sort of clean it up and make it look a little less messy. But honestly, that's what it was going to take to get this to adhere the best. So I'm just going to take my Sure Bonder hot glue gun, and I'm using the Tough Sticks today. And I like these Tough Sticks because it's an industrial strength adhesive, and these are a Sure Bonder glue stick. And y'all, they are so awesome. They're not going to go anywhere. Like, these are the best glue sticks when you don't want what you're gluing down to move. Like, they are absolutely amazing. So I'm going to make sure I've got both of my pieces kind of lined up here, and I'll just hold this until it dries. And once it's dry, I'm going to go back and pile that hot glue on. All right, y'all. This project's done. I'm gonna give this just a few minutes to get cool, and then when I come back, I'll have it all set up and staged and ready to see. So hang tight. And y'all, here she is all finished. Isn't it precious? I think I totally nailed that trompe l'oeil look on the wheels. What do you think? It really just disappears and makes your eye think that there's only 3 spokes there. What do you think? I can't wait to put some fall foliage in there, maybe some fairy lights. It's going to be so cute. That does it for today's video, y'all. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. And also, don't forget to share this video with your friends if you totally enjoyed it. Till next time, happy DIYing, y'all.